Hello everyone, and welcome to the in-depth review of the Onyx Boox Note 2 e-reader. Before I even begin, a word of apology, because you will notice that throughout the video there has been some problems with the focus with the camera itself. I've never experienced that before, and I've kind of figured out that it was the combination of a relatively dim screen with super high reflections. As you can see, it's very reflective, and that was throwing off the autofocus quite a bit. It only happens on a couple of occasions when you don't actually miss anything important, so I was lucky there. Why didn't I brighten the screen up all the way? If you brighten up the screen all the way, then autofocus doesn't have a problem, because the screen brightness is almost equal as the reflection itself, because I wanted you to see the real world conditions and how this device would normally be used. As an e-ink device, its main use is that it doesn't blind you with light, and it doesn't cause eye strain, and that the battery life is quite long. It would defy the purpose that I just crank up the display and tell you, hey look, it looks great, when it's actually not the case. So I wanted to show you exactly how this is when you're using the device as you normally comfortably would, and how much the reflections are actually an issue, if they are an issue for you. So that's the autofocus problem sorted out, and now on with the video. Let's first cover the general overview of this device and what the specifications are. This is a 10.3-inch e-ink tablet that is packed with performance. First and foremost, it runs on Android 9, and it is able to connect to Google Play, so you have the power of an Android 9 tablet here, but with the benefits or shortcomings of an e-ink display. It comes packed with an octa-core 2 GHz CPU, so serious processing power. Comes with 4 GB of RAM, and it has 64 GB of storage. So you won't be lacking for storage, and you certainly won't be lacking for power spec-wise, on the paper at least. Connectivity is also upgraded, so now you have dual band as well, so 2.4 GHz is supported and 5 GHz. You've got Bluetooth, so you can hook up your wireless devices. The screen itself has the capability of both capacitive touch and electromagnetic touch, which is the pen, and the pen has 4096 degrees of pressure sensitivity. However, it's just pressure itself. It does not detect angle at all. The pen itself, let's just get it out of the way, it's as basic as it gets. Cheap plastic, has one button, has an eraser, and has a plastic nib. It's just plastic, but it works. Don't expect anything special here, it's as ordinary as it gets. On the software side, as I mentioned, it runs Android 9, but that also means that it supports lots of different files. So suffice to say, it's like a tablet. It just reads all of the files, which includes pictures, PNGs, BMPs, JPEGs, and audio files as well. Only supports MP3 and WAV formats, so no FLAC support or anything like that. It also has the USB 3 on the bottom here, supports the OTG functionality, which means that you can plug in specialized devices, and then you could use maybe a mouse or a keyboard or anything else via that extension. So very versatile, very expandable, and it can do lots of different things. Battery capacity is huge. It's 4300 milliamps and lasts for, they say, for 4 weeks. I've had it for 3 weeks and I didn't have to charge it yet. So, and I've been using it for reviews and for this and for that. So yeah, I guess that the battery life will depend on the type of Wi-Fi that you have, and also, more importantly, on how much screen light you're using. I haven't been using a lot, because that defies the purpose. For me personally, defies the purpose of this device. I just used it with minimum light throughout the testing. As far as the design and overall ergonomy of the device goes, it's on the lighter side, but it's not really light. It's definitely lighter than the previous Note and Note Pro, I think. It weighs in at 378 grams, but that doesn't really mean anything until you hold it in your hands, and I've noticed that the weight of devices actually has a lot to do with the proportions of a device and just how it handles in the hand when you're working it. I'm not a fan of the hardware design and how it works. It's basically as standard as it gets. You get nice beveled edges and a button at the middle, which is a back button, not a home button. On the bottom you have your USB-C port, microphone, nothing on the sides, no volumes or anything like that. And you have the power button and a horrible blue notification LED lamp, which is like the ugliest blue that I've seen. But thankfully, once you turn it into do not disturb mode, then it doesn't light up, so it's fine. The screen itself is glass and it's relatively thick. They say that the screen is flush with the bezel. That's not true. The screen is not flush. The screen is inside, but you have the glass on top, and the glass surface is flush because it's one piece. But as you'll see later on, this discrepancy of the depth and that the screen is actually not leveled with the bezel of the device, that for me personally causes a bit of a problem, because it's a constant disconnect between the pen and the screen. But more on that later. The back is plastic and it feels a little cheap, but it's sturdy and it's strong. I don't like personally the feel of the plastic. If I were to describe it, it feels a little bit like a hardcover book that's not glossy but semi-glossy hardcover book, if you know what I mean. It just gets stained with fingertips all over the place, and of course the fingertips here, but that's to be expected. It's glass. For me, the combination of the heavy glass and the battery and the light back of the device, it's very front heavy and it just doesn't sit that comfortably in the hand. And this is primarily a reader, so prolonged use, I didn't find it too comfortable. I did actually mind the weight. I guess the main problem for me are these rounded edges, because it makes sense if you're holding it like this, then it works. But I don't hold it like this because that just looks weird. I mean, no, you don't really do it like that. What you actually end up doing is you hold it at the bottom on the sides as well, and then you feel quite a bit of weight, and because of this slanted edge here, the contact point with the palms is very small, so you basically have two corners digging into your palms. And for extended use, especially if I'm lying down and reading, that actually feels and it just digs into those corners. I would have preferred to have seen a flat edge here, because the weight distribution would at least be distributed around four corners or two larger contact surfaces. Now it's just two small contact surface points. So I at least do get to feel it, and I think those are the main sources of discomfort that I had with the overall physical design. Pen, as I mentioned, cheap plastic, doesn't feel good in the hand, but it works. I haven't had any problems with it, so it doesn't slip or anything like that, but it certainly is not something that I would expect at this price point. If we put the price point into the whole equation, then this pen is just a disgrace, just a complete disgrace. Alright, so now that we got that covered, let's dig in deep into the Onyx Boox Note 2. Here is the main interface, and it's fairly neat and organized in a good way. Basically, you can think about it as having your info bar or notifications bar, then you have the main area here, and we have the tool area here. Like in any other Android operated device, the pull-down menu is here. First and foremost, we have the back, the menu, and the multi-app button. So basically, if I go here, then I can see which applications are open, and then I can clean them out all, or I can press the button and go back. So that's your home button, and then you have the back button as well, which basically just closes down the menu. The button here, physical button here, as I said before, it works as a back button, not as a home button. Wireless, then you have the rotation, you have your Bluetooth, And then we have a couple of things that are specific to the device, and especially this one here, normal mode. This is specific to Note 2 because it has an advanced screen. It has 4 modes that you can run the screen in. So normal mode is default, and that's like the best quality, but lowest speed. Then you have the speed mode where refresh rate is a little bit faster, but there's a bit of a degradation in the quality. Then you have A2 mode where you have ghosting and lowering of resolution, but even faster refresh rate. And then it has something called the X mode, which the loss of detail, as they say, the loss of details is slightly heavy, like read really heavy, and it's suitable for web page and video broadcasting, and we'll get into that. So basically you can get a refresh rate fast enough on this e-ink display that it actually can play video, but we'll get to it. So first of all of the reviews and everything that I'm going to be doing is going to be done in the normal mode because that's the best quality that we can get. Then you have also contrast, so you can increase, decrease your contrast. Underneath these menu buttons or options we have the backlight. So if I turn off my spotlight on the side, let's see if I can just turn them off. Now this is without any light. If you can turn it on, you can slide these and it can go and be quite bright, and it can get to be quite bright or, you know, totally off. But the important part here is that you can see that we have daylight and night light, and basically what they are is, I'm just going to increase the amount here and uncheck sync so that I can change them independently. So the night light is basically the blue color tint, and the daylight is the orange color light. So if you check the sync option, it allows you to mix and match these to your preference. If you sync them, as soon as you move them, they'll both snap onto the same value, and then you just continue doing what you're doing. Now I'm just going to leave it at half so that it resembles what I normally use this device, under which kind of circumstances I used it, because bright is far too bright. And on the bottom we have our overall volume and the regular sound mixing type of panel, like in any Android device. This is your main work area, and this is where you will see what mode you are in. And incidentally, you choose your modes here on the side, and we have 6 things to choose from. By default, you're in your library. Then you have the option of going to the shop, note-taking, then you have your storage, we have apps, and then finally we have settings. And since we are in settings, I just want to mention a couple of things here that are really cool and important. I'm a user manual type of guy. I like to go through all of the options and understand how to use the full potential of the device, and I usually do that prior to using the device. I read through the whole manual and then I just try things out. I love the idea that the user manual is right there, and I wish more manufacturers would actually employ that. In the settings we have, of course, the option to change your language, date and time, power settings, which are quite extensive. You have a lot of things to actually set up, and one of the things that I really do like is this one here at the bottom. Always enable Wi-Fi when device boots up. So basically you can just turn that off, and then you can connect online only when you want to. So for the purpose of this review and testing this out, I kept it on, but even in my daily use, what I would probably use is the off, because it would save the battery, but not as if you need it, because the battery lasts like forever. Then you have auto sleep options, and really a lot of things that you can fine-tune how your device is going to set up. Then we of course have the networks. You can also set up the global password, which is just a numerical type of password, so only numbers, no letters. Your account settings, then you can also check your application settings, so it is possible to use unknown sources and to use the device as a debug device like a normal Android device. Firmware update is here, and also feedback that you can send. So that's the general overview of the user interface. One other thing that's worth noting is this little thing here, and that's called a navigation ball, and that's actually an app, so you can disable it if you don't want it. And that's like a little helper that you can position wherever you want, and that's a good thing because it's in the way very frequently. In reality, this is one of the first things that I kind of disabled, and but it can be useful. It's just that it is in the way. There's like never enough room on the screen. There's never a good place on the screen to place it where it's not in the way. I wish there was, because it's super useful. What does it do? Well, it's just a button that you press and you have a shortcut for 5 functions, whatever they may be. So you can customize them completely, and I customized them in my case to use home, full screen refresh, shortcut to the file manager app, clear out cache, and power shortcut. So this is a super useful type of thing. The only thing is that you'll probably see it during the review unless I start disabling it. It does get in the way. So it's something to kind of be mindful. Maybe you'll be able to find a better place for it. I haven't yet, and it was always kind of in the way, so I just ended up going into apps and finding the navigation ball and turning it off. So that's basically how you turn this whole thing on or off, and that's incidentally where you set it up, but more on that a little bit later. First, let's tackle the reader side of things, because that is the main focus of this device. I'd like to go through the library functionality general, and what you can do is basically you will see your overview of the documents, but as you've probably seen in the unpacking video or unboxing video, it was all a bit of a mess, and thankfully we have an option to actually organize these things, and that's by the use of these icons here. So of course you can search by name, and then you can find the file, but more importantly we can organize our files in our library by using something they call sub-libraries. Functions pretty much exactly like a folder, except that it's called a sub-library. So these are all of the default documents this is how my default library looked like. I didn't like that, so I organized it into default documents and I placed them all in there. We have 2 main view options. By default I'm using this one, which is basically the library model, and it can be between scan mode and storage mode, and this one with the clock, that's your recent document. Then we have the ability, as I mentioned, search by name, add a new subfolder or sub-library. Then we have this button here, which is the multi-select, because if I long press here, on any individual one, you'll just get additional options for that one, which is usually rename or delete. So you don't get the multi-select that way. Multi-select works by entering the multi-select mode, and then you can just select these guys, and you can see these numbers here, hopefully. So it says 0 in here, but and 0 in here. So if I enter this one and, for example, select these 3 guys and go back out, it now says 3. So 3 files selected in that sub-library, and these. And while you're in the multi-select mode on in the toolbar, which can be moved left and right, we'll show that later, you have select all, you can move it to another sub-library, you can delete them, or you can just cancel the multi-select tool. So in reality, the way that functions is, let's say I entered this area here and I wanted to create a new sub-library called Alesis Ion, not Alexis, but Alesis, yes, Ion, and then we go OK. So now I have my new sub-library, and now I'm just going to select the documents that need to go into that sub-library. Then I'm just going to go move, and I'll go into Alesis Ion, and they are moved. So super simple, super intuitive, everything works pretty much as you would expect it, except this multi-select mode, which takes maybe time to do it once, and then you get used to it, and then it just works. And this of course is switching between list view and a grid view. I prefer the grid view. On the side here you have additional options, and that's a theme, like in any mode and in any tools you will always have very useful additional options, and this is where we have filtering and sorting, and you can sort by date, name, and all sorts of things. I mean, there we go. So if you want, you can pause and you can see what are the options for filtering here. Then you can refresh your library. Sometimes is needed. I haven't noticed it, but yeah, if your book doesn't really appear, you just go refresh and it rescans the device and adds to the library automatically. Then you have scan covers, something that's quite useful because when you download a book and or just copy the book over, it might not show the cover initially until you access it for the very first time. So let's say that you've transferred like 120 books and you want those covers in there. You will just press scan covers, it will scan them and generate the thumbnails, which are then displayed as you can see here. And of course, when you enter the sub-library, then each document is displayed by the cover if they have it. If they don't have it, then they look like this. So yeah, important to actually know. And then finally we have the library settings, and then you can also double check which directories to scan and how to actually display the books, because you can display the file name or the title itself. As far as I'm concerned, all the options that are given are super focused and super useful. There's no arbitrary stupid stuff. It's just stuff that you actually might want to use. The thing that goes hand in hand with the library is the shop here, and that's basically your ebook shop. And the weird thing is that it's called a shop, but there's no method of payment, and therefore there are no paid apps or there are no paid items in here. So everything that you find here is free. So that means that they are quite old titles and royalty free, but that you have quite a lot to start off with if you want to. And you can generally go by category, so you can switch between fiction and non-fiction, and in both you have subgenres as well. So you have like science fiction, horror, fairy tales, mythology, lots of different things. And yeah, basically you just click on it, you download it, and that's pretty much it. And yeah, so let's just do one. Okay, so let's go tragedy, full edition download, and now it's downloading. Download finished, and if I go back to my library, here it is, and it's displayed immediately. And then if I just want to move it to my bookshelf, I would just go multi-select or select and move to my bookshelf, and done. I'm organized. So very straightforward, super easy to use, and very direct to use. Now we're in the reader mode, and this is the device's default reader program, and as far as I understand, you can load in your own readers as well. So it is possible to load in Kindle and other things as well. This is not something that I'm going to be testing because I don't own a Kindle and I don't have any content in Kindle, so I don't have any way of testing that. But from everything that I've read, it is possible. The display is quite nice, and it's very crisp and clean to read. By default, it works really easily. You touch on the right side to progress one page forward, touch on the left side to progress one page back, not swiping or anything, just touch, and you touch in the middle to get the options themselves. And don't forget that the pull down menu still works with all of the same options. Pinch in for zooming out and pinch out for zooming in, like on any other tablet device. There's one more thing that's also possible to use, and that's if you simultaneously press diagonal corners like this, you create a screenshot, and then you can just go back with the screenshot, you can save it, or you can share it in different ways. So it's quite an easy way to do it. Either corners work, but since there's a bookmark icon here, which is really easy to press, I have a tendency to just use these two corners so that I don't have to think about the bookmark itself. And it works pretty good. I mean, it takes a little bit time to kind of figure out where to do this, but yeah, once you do it, then it just works. When you press in the middle, you get your options. You have your upper toolbar and the lower toolbar as well, I guess. I guess this would be taskbar, this is a toolbar, because here you can switch between different documents and tabs. You can turn your pen on or off. You can turn the display light on or off. Then we have the dictionary, and you can load custom dictionaries, and more on that a little bit later, and search the word, search by word or phrase. And again, in the menu here we have screen refresh, but more importantly we have settings, and when we go into the settings you have again really useful selection of settings and things that you can change. So in general settings or global settings, you have a lot of options here. I'm gonna just display this because it would take way too long to go through everyone, so you can pause and then check all these things up, and then you can look up in the user manual as well. But suffice to say, a lot of really good and useful options. Touch settings are super cool. So basically, as I talked about, this is the touch mode 1, the default. So touch left, page back, touch right, page forward, and the middle is your options menu. But you also have touch modes like this, where you can just do with the thumbs, and in the middle for the option, and blah 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 blah. And most importantly, you have custom modes as well. You can customize in any way that you want, which is super useful, and I love that approach. Then we have text-to-speech engine. You can switch between the default Baidu TTS, and in the other, by default you have Google text-to-speech engine, but if you load up other ones, they'll show up here. We have export settings, we have screenshot settings, again how to save them and how to name them, and version name of the Reader app. Alright, so that's the upper toolbar. Now at the bottom we have these different modes, and they are your main, so to speak, modes or tools or whatever you want to call them. So TOC, table of content, of course, that's the first one, and it's interesting because it has a lot of useful things. One thing I noticed is that getting to precisely tap on and expand the subcategories can be very tricky, because it works only on this triangle. So if you go with the pen, then it's not a problem at all. If you have slightly bigger fingers, then it's a little bit of a problem, especially here in the corner. As you can see, it can be quite tedious. Now, why is this a problem? Well, because when you're reading, you usually don't have your pen because you don't have where to place the pen. So it can get to be a little bit like fiddly, but other than that, once you get it open, it actually works fine. And if you have subcategories, they expand, and that's all good. And you can change the order in ascending, descending. You can make it full screen if you want or not. And once that's selected, then you can just tap on where you want to go, and of course you go there. That's kind of the normal way of doing things. But more importantly, this is your default mode of the table of contents, so you just get the contents of the document. This one here, for example, if I tap, now it's going to list the bookmarks within this document, and it just tells me when it was made, date and time when it was made, and also option to delete it, and where, in which chapter it is of the document, and on which page. And of course it gives you a little bit of the beginning phrase of the page itself. Then you have annotations, so it's possible to make annotations. I'm going to show that a little bit later on, but you can also search your annotations throughout the document, which also says the content of my annotation and what it is linked to. And then I can just go here and link, and I can edit it, I can bookmark it, I can delete it, I can do whatever I want. And on top of it all, you also have scribbles, so areas where I actually draw something up, or any area within the document, any page where you scribbled or wrote something in, it will automatically be added to the scribbles, and you can just browse and get to it very quickly. You just tap on it and there you go. So super useful, and I think that the table of content is a really lovely way how it's been organized, and it works very good. No important thing to say is that on EPUBs, of course it has, but on PDFs, depending on what kind of PDF you have, some documents are simply scanned images, and there of course you won't have table of content, and it doesn't generate a table of content itself. the document itself has to have a table of contents, otherwise it will not recognize it, and then you'll have a little icon here with the book shrugging and saying, I don't know. So I love the table of contents, super useful. Then the default one that you'll usually go to is the progress. And the progress, you can just scroll through the pages of your document. Then you can, when you're on this page, you can tell it to read it to you.
Same. I was in my laboratory at 4 o'clock. And since then, I've lived 8 days, such days as no human being ever lived before. I'm nearly worn out. But I shan't sleep till I've told this thing over to you. Then I shall go to bed. But no interruptions. Is it agreed? Agreed, said the editor. And the rest of us echoed, agreed. And with that
Okay, so normal reading stuff, and then you have some settings as well. So this is basically a shortcut to your settings, and I guess it's useful. Then we also have the option of slideshow, so you can have the minimum interval of 5 seconds all the way per page, all the way up to 180 seconds per page, and then it will automatically swap the page for you, and you can set the maximum pages as well. Then we have the thumbnail page view, so we can change the page view between 1 page, 4 pages, or 9 pages, and navigate the document in that way. One thing that's a little bit weird is that the navigation is a little bit different. Now it doesn't respond to touches, but you have the arrows on the side, and you get out of the menu by pressing the X here. And then you have the undo and redo, as in swap to the previous page that you were on and the next one. So this is kind of super useful for me, because you can flip between, let's say for now, for whatever reason that I wanted to compare the text here and maybe an image or a schematic that was drawn in page 51. And then you can quite easily flip between the 2 pages. Or at some time you can use the split view, but which kind of is more useful, but this is also pretty cool as well. Next we have the format, and the format is a little bit different between an EPUB and a PDF, because you will have on PDFs you have reflow option as well, but yeah, it's fairly standard stuff. Things that are worth noting is that you can just change the font size, which is basically your squish and zoom in, zoom out that I talked about. Then you can choose between a gazillion fonts, total fonts 232. I'm not gonna go through them, but it works good. You can change the encoding, which is super useful, so you can actually support pretty much any type of language that you may run into, and there's like total 18 types of encoding, so you're really well covered there. And then you have the other option, as in I don't know, just formatting. How is it formatted and what type of, yeah, this traditional, I don't understand what it is. I'm not a super versed as far as readers go, so I don't know what traditional does, but indent definitely changes the indentation. And then you also have changing the format, so is it going to be column, 1 column, 2 column style. Then this is basically rotating your view, so you can just flip it around and then it just renders, or I can just flip it back to the vertical, so you can orient it in any way you want. You can adjust image contrast, you can adjust text contrast, and you can embolden text in general so that it's a little bit more bolder or not. And yeah, the contrast works quite good, but it does get a little like a bad newspaper print when you overdo it. It's just really weird, so I tend to just leave it at default. They work really well. And then of course you have your spacing style, line spacing, paragraph, vertical and horizontal spacing. So pretty much everything that you can think of is there. Now we get to the cool bit, which I really love. And you can see that now this guy is in the way, so I'm just gonna move it here, but soon it's gonna become in the way again. So split view is super cool, and basically what it's gonna do automatically, it's gonna flip it to horizontal mode, and you're gonna see 2 pages at the same time. and you'll be able to navigate in the same way, and you can choose between 2 pages of the current document. So I can go to current document, it's going to flip to horizontal, and now I can go here and then just navigate as well, and then now I'm here on a page 30, and here I'm on page 26, 27, and the same thing works. They're completely independent, so I can just flip between them and they just work pretty much okay. If you tap in the middle of either one of them, you'll get the settings again the same way. The only thing that's different is that the general top-down menu is valid for the entire device, but effectively the split view splits it into 2 separate ones, and you have these options completely available. The way you exit out of this split view is by just pressing the back button. So you press the back button and you're back to where you were. So the split view has a couple of options. So you have between different pages of the current document, then you can browse between different documents, which is super cool. Then you have also an awesome way, which is document and note, and you're able to actually just kind of go through your document as you would, and then scribble your notes here. Basically what you do is you create a separate notebook which is associated with this document, and every time you open up this document, it also will be able to gain access to this notebook that is associated with the document. And of course you can export, save it, share it separately from the document itself. And then finally we have page translation, which is super useful as well. So one side is your original document, and the other side is real-time translation. It's using Google Translate, but you can use Baidu Translator as well, and then you have different languages available, and it's a little bit more slow, but the languages are pretty much limited to the same types of languages regardless of which one you are using. So there's not a huge amount of selection here yet. Maybe that will change in time, but for what it is here, it's quite good. And the languages that are supported are, I'm just gonna scroll through pages so that you can see. There. So those are the supported languages that you can translate. And one thing that's important to note is that the second one, more often than not, is bigger than one page. The translated page is bigger than one page, so just remember that you can also navigate this one within itself, but you can't flip a page in the translation. Flipping a page is only here, done on the original document. The split view is super awesome, and I love how that works. Finally, we have the scribble, and the scribble will just open up the toolbar here for your pen, and it's basically just giving you your pen tools, where we can use pretty much exactly the same options that we have for the note taking. So you have your brush or your pencil, line width, you can adjust how wide it is, and then we have the basic geometric forms such as line, triangle, circle, and square, or rectangle and ellipse to be more precise. The cool thing is the color. Now, even though this is a black and white device, they're using something that I've mentioned such a long time ago, and I wished Remarkable had that, but you have the ability not just the grayscale, black, dark, gray, medium gray, light gray, and white, but you also have the ability to mark and scribble in red, green, and blue. And even though naturally this is red, but it's not red, right? However, when you export it, this will be marked in red. So this is absolutely perfect for grading, for making notes, or doing whatever it is that you want. This is such a simple thing, and I just don't understand why it's not implemented in other devices. This is something that should be mandatory as far as I'm concerned. And I'll show examples. This works really good. Then you have your eraser, which also works like this. So you just turn all back your pen, or you can press the button and scribble here and then you delete. And alternatively, if you really want to, you can just turn this on and then you just press and then it goes there. So it's like super redundant how many ways you can go between this. But also we have the ability to undo, and you can't just tap and go, you have to wait for each one and then you can redo as well. But again, you have to wait until it's finished, until the icon is finished blinking, and then you can save the page or save the document, sorry, then you save the document with all of the changes that you've made. One thing that's worth noting is that the scribble is persistent, so whatever settings that you've made will persist throughout the other documents as well. And in general, if you don't want it, just remember that on the top you can just disable the pen. So if your pen doesn't work, that's most likely the case is that it's not enabled here on the top. Finally, I would like to focus on word selection, and it has a really cool way of dealing with things. So let's say, for example, if you have selected a single word, it will display up or down depending on where in the document you are. It will automatically use the default dictionary that's in there and display the meaning of the word. This is done offline because the dictionary itself is loaded in the device, so you don't have to be online in order to actually look that up. If you do run into a word that it doesn't know, it will just say unknown word, and then you still have options here to actually deal with it. For example, you can do, if you're online, you can just do a web search, and then it will simply do a web search on that word, and it will most likely go to the dictionary automatically so that you get the meaning of the word. But of course you need to be online for that functionality. Naturally, you can speak, or if you start speaking, it will start speaking from that. It won't just say that word, it will just
another at 17.
So it will just start speaking from that word. Then you can also search the entire document for that word, and then we can also underline it or add it to the dictionary as well. We can also, to the selection of a word or a bigger selection, we can also copy it. We can do a translation here, and this little icon here is annotation. So that's how you add annotations. And now we can go to the multiple selection examples. So for example, if I just have one word, it will work like that. But if I now expand the selection, then I get a different type of a menu, and this is my highlighting menu. So I can choose between gray and black colors, and I can choose between 4 different types of underlining, and these persist. So you can have full straight line, wavy line, dotted line, and whole highlight, and all of those can be of different colors as well. The important thing to note is that these persist, so my last change, if I make this one wavy, then the next one is again going to be wavy, right? But if I expand it, now I can change this to be highlighted and maybe gray. And yeah, if I wanted to do this only on a single word, then I would need to select that word, and then I would choose this option here, which is the highlighting, and then you get the same option as before, and becomes a highlighted item. Once an item is highlighted, you just click on it once and then you get your options. And as before, you can copy, you can add an annotation. If I, for example, selected this and I added an annotation here, and let's now just speak it. So this is my new annotation in a safe spot. So as usual, yeah, this is not the best, and as I mentioned previously, you really want to switch to Gboard like immediately. The default keyboard and the default speech recognition is borderline useless, and it just doesn't work. Like it's a complete night and day difference between the Gboard and the default ones. That's pretty much the number one thing that you want to do. So this is my annotation. Are you gonna? Nope. And this is something that I kind of noticed. It's not just the display that's sluggish, the device is sluggish, because if I just wanted to type in annotation, Okay, this time it worked. But sometimes it won't. Sometimes it will skip words or letters, and sometimes it's just going to be a little weird. So it's a little, performance-wise, it's a little bit inconsistent, which is not something that I would expect from a device with such high specs. But anyway, this is your highlight, and this indication of these 3 little dots, that's your annotation. And then if I tap on my highlighted selection, I can see my annotation here. So I can't really directly tap on it. I have to tap on the highlighted selection, go to the annotation, and I'll see my annotation, where you can delete it or update it if you want. And most importantly, all of these things that you actually do, one thing that I haven't mentioned is that one thing that I haven't shown is that this little bookmark, so by default this is not bookmarked, and if you press it then it becomes black, and this becomes a bookmarked page, which in table of contents, if you go to bookmarks, here it is, my page number 8 is now here. So I can just flip between bookmarks via the table of contents. I can see my annotations as I described before, and scribbles as well. So really useful type of overview, and I think in general it's extremely comprehensive, and it's a really good reader experience as far as the capabilities go. Now, as far as the handling of the device goes, this is a little bit different. I'm not too happy about it, mainly because of 3 things. For me, the weight is a little bit too much. It's just a little bit too heavy to be comfortable to be held with one hand, and also the shape, the curved shape that I mentioned before, is just not that, I don't know, I don't find it comfortable to handle. Maybe somebody else will, but for me personally, I don't find it comfortable. Second of all, the feeling of that plastic, again, it's highly personal type of thing. But I don't like it. Some people do, I don't. But my biggest problem is, again, the glass screen, which is cold to the touch and is super reflective, and that in daytime becomes a big problem. So in daytime you get a lot of reflections, and what you end up doing is you just turn up the light, but then you end up with what? With a tablet that has a slightly dim display and really low refresh rate. I don't know, not my kind of thing. But capabilities, software capabilities and functionalities are amazing. There's like really nothing that you could fault this device for, but the choice of how the screen was been handled, and also this depth between the actual screen and between the surface of the glass and the screen, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but for me it just bugs me a lot, and I could never disconnect from that. It's always just a screen underneath a glass surface. It never becomes anything else. So if that's something that you're okay with, then great. For me, that was always a big turnoff. Okay, next one, let's cover the note-taking capabilities. So in order to take notes, you get into the note menu. Ultimately, we have 2 different types of notes. We have our so-called local notes, and then you have associated notes, or basically reading notes. If you wanted to access notes that you were making while you were scribbling inside of a document, this is exactly where it would be. So you just go to the document-related notes, and these will be listed here. Now, as far as the notes goes, let's just cover first the overview and organization of it. Very similar like with the library of books. So we have search, we can add our add folders and subfolders, and the selection menu again works exactly the same. The only difference is that you have a little bit more options. One more option, actually, you have sync. So it can sync with the cloud, I think, with the cloud service, so that they are synced with your account if you're logged in with the Boox account itself. But export, move, delete and cancel, they're all there still. So pretty much the same type of functionality. And in the additional options, you have backup and recover, you can sort, and we have additional settings. And again, huge amount of things that you can do. So your stylus calibration, account sync and backup, note password settings, AI recognition language settings. You can just choose from which language to recognize your notes. You can also enable automatic AI recognition in the background. Lots of different things which are really cool. Now, before I enter notes, you'll probably notice that, for example, this note here has an image of a page, while this one here just has a lock, and the same thing on this folder as well. Well, this is really cool because Note 2 has an option of locking or privacy settings for your notes. So for example, if I wanted to access this one, I can't. It will just say for ask for a password. Now you can't have document specific passwords. It's going to be a password for that you're generally using. So in this case, for review, I'm just using 111, and then you unlock it, and then it becomes unlocked. This is an empty document, so of course you don't see anything. That's just an empty page. But also, if you want to unlock it, you do a long press or lock it, and then you just have this little icon here. It's not an option, you just have to press on the icon here, and then if I type in my password again and confirm, now it becomes unlocked and I can use it. Same functionality is on the folders as well. You can lock and unlock them as you see fit. So I think this is a super awesome thing to have, and something that I think other devices miss. One thing to note is that this will not encrypt your files. So if you export and send the file, it will not be encrypted, it will not have any kind of protection, it will just be a normal PDF or PNG that you send. This is simply a local protection on the device itself, nothing more, nothing less. Now that we've covered that, let's get into a note and see how the basic navigation and operations are. So your basic navigation in a notebook is a little bit different than in a document or in a reader, because it's simply a different program. So the touches no longer work. The only gesture that works is zoom in and zoom out via pinch. These icons here at the top, it's like search for a word in text boxes. Undo, redo, and these arrows here next to the page numbers, they are the ones that flip between pages. So that's how you flip between different pages, or you can go to the page overview and directly choose a page from your notebook. So you can just choose a page and then you're flipping all the way there. At the top here we have the hide toolbar and show toolbar icon, and that's basically your general overview. Additionally, this is where you can edit your document name. So initial note testing, I can just change it or name it whatever I want. But you also have the option of instead of having tabs, now you have a little bit of a list of all your previously opened notebooks. You can't close it and open it, it's just always gonna open like this, but you can choose them there, but if you just click out, then it closes itself. Next in line we have the brushes, eraser, and the color tool. So I like to cover these all in one section because it just kind of makes sense. So the brushes are exactly the same as on the document. So you have your brush, pencil, line, triangle, circle, or an ellipse, and a square, and you can adjust your line width normally. Nothing too spectacular with that. How does the pen itself work? Disappointing. The main difference between these two tools is, let's just add a new page so you can see it. So if I'm in a brush and I just do it, I have very light pressure. You can see that it's very thin, and then as I start to increase my pressure, I get into much more depth. However, there's absolutely no recognition of an angle relative to the screen. It's simply the most basic pressure type of sensitivity. Sensitivity works good, it's okay, but nothing really spectacular. So nothing to brag about. It works, but in my opinion it's quite rudimentary. Now, one thing I noticed is that the template usually it doesn't delete lines over the template, and that's why I actually added the refresh button here so that it actually can redraw the whole thing again. The main difference between the brush and the pencil is that the pencil itself is not pressure sensitive at all. But there's no stroke difference, there's nothing. There's no difference whatsoever. The only thing that's different is the fact that the brush is pencil sensitive, or the brush is pressure sensitive, the pencil itself is not. And now it's bugging out. So I'm just going to move it out of the way and refresh. There we go. And delete this. There we go. Then you have your line, which is super useful, and basically it works by setting the start and the end, and then when you release, it's drawn. Very useful, I think, for many different things, and it's something that would be very welcome in all different types of devices of this sort. And you can of course adjust your thickness. Then we have a triangle, so the triangle works from the point, so from the top point it starts drawing it, and it starts drawing as equal angle triangle. So if I expand like this, then it's going to be an equal angle triangle, but if it starts detecting an edge where the toolbar is, then it becomes a little bit weird. I haven't found a shortcut to make it a right angle triangle, but you can try like this. But it is one thing that I do miss, is the ability to actually just have a right angle triangle. That's something that just isn't kind of working. But if you start drawing things near the edge, you can get this type of effect, which is kind of interesting. However, what's worth noting is that it does not work on the other side. It just works on the side. It just detects the toolbar edge itself. And finally, we have, in a similar fashion, the circle, which is actually an ellipse, and I haven't found a way of making it a circle. I've tried using the button, but that didn't work. So if I just press button and start drawing, it just is an eraser. So I don't have an option of making it a perfect square. Similar like the triangle and the circle and the rectangle as well. I can draw a rectangle, but I cannot constrain proportions to make it a perfect square. So that's something that's missing, but it's certainly a good thing to actually have these options. It's a huge addition, and I think it's super useful to have in many different types of situations. Next, we have the select, copy and move tool, which is the lasso tool here. And it works very simple. I mean, for example, I can just draw a selection over what I wanna select, and now I can do things to this selection, such as I can move it around here, there. I can say like, oh, I don't like what I've changed, I'll just undo it. So then I can select again, and then I can copy it, and then I can paste it. And one thing that's important, you can copy paste between different pages and different documents as well. So it's fully functional, and the scale itself you can rotate normally, so you can rotate OK, and you can scale, but it's only it's non-uniform scaling, but you cannot mirror. So you have the ability to use non-uniform scale, which is kind of cool, because you can do lots of different weird little things, but you can't go into the negative scale, and you can't really mirror things. So that's one thing that is missing from this whole thing, but at any given point I can just go undo the changes that I made, and or trash. Trash is to delete the selection itself. Next, we have a text box, and a text box is exactly what it says, so you can just position it where you want, and I can expand it maybe to be full width of the page. Let's see if I can grab this over here and make it this wide, and then I can type text, or I can just dictate text. So this is my text example for the text box. I'm dictating all sorts of different stuff in order to get multi-line text box in my notebook. There we go, and it's really good. I think it just it's a standard Gboard type of detection and it works really good. Once that's done, you have the ability to select it, and then you can just move it around. You can change spacing, you can change font size, you can bold it, underline it, italic, and again you can copy paste and do different things with it. As long as you are in text box mode, wherever you click, it will position an indication of a new text box. Next we have the AI, which is the text recognition, and it has the reflow recognition, which honestly I never got it to work properly. Original recognition works, so it just goes and it converts everything and just takes a little bit, but yeah, this is an entirely new page for offline text recognition. I've tested this and it works online and offline as well. Now, how precise it is? So. As you can see, sometimes it's a hit and miss, but the thing that I really don't like is that it's creating a new text box for each line that it recognizes, and that makes it a real pain in the butt to actually edit or change the font type, the size, or anything like that. I haven't found a way to unify it all into one text box, for example, or to recognize a paragraph and then just kind of give me this as one text box and this as one text box instead. So it's a little bit hit and miss and not entirely useful. I see me being quite frustrated with this tool because it's not doing the job the way it should. Reflow recognition should be doing what I want it to do, but its results are even more hit and miss and even weirder, and also they take a really long time, as you can see, to convert even for a small one. Yeah, so yeah, that's basically then it converts it into a whole page, and then it tries to do this, but it doesn't separate into paragraphs or anything. It just goes everything is in there, and then you have to edit again. So either option that I use, and in every single situation that I've tried it, it was always less than ideal, the solution that it gave me. And I think just dictating the text into the text boxes that you want is easier and faster than dealing with this thing. Next in line, this icon here is the background, so we can change our backgrounds, and you can use different types of templates. There's lots to choose from. These are the built-in ones. But you also have up here, you have local and cloud, and basically, so from cloud you can download different types. They are pretty much in Chinese, all the ones that I can actually see. But the local ones, it's empty because I didn't upload any. However, all of the ones that you would upload to a specific storage folder, they would automatically appear here, which is fantastic. So there's no weird things that you need to do or anything complicated. You simply copy a PNG file over to the device and place it into a specific folder. You go to local and they will be there. I mean, that's basically how it's supposed to work. Remarkable if you're listening. Then we have the icon to disable touch, which is quite useful. I'm being very careful while using this, but when I'm not careful, when I'm not in such a control situation like here, where I have to keep it for the frame shot and light shot and all of that, I find it extremely often that it happens that my palm does something that I don't want it to while writing. So that's something that to keep in mind, that this one is actually quite useful. So this is a page refresh. Plus and minus, you can add or delete a page that you're at. So add a page after, delete the page you're on. You can save the whole notebook. And then we finally have the extra options. Extra options are basically exporting, and when you're exporting, you can export a single page that you're on as a PNG or the entire document as a PDF, and that works really good. And this test, as you saw, I mean, I'm going to show it now how it looks like when it's exported. So these lines were written in red, green, and blue colors in these circles as well, and while they look like this in the device, when they're exported you can clearly see that the color is there. Sharing, I couldn't get it to work because once you actually go to share, it will export a page, it will generate it, it will upload it somewhere, and then you basically are able to scan the QR code, and the document is available for a little while, but I could never get it to work. I was always getting an error both for PNG and PDF. I don't really know why that is, but it just is. Before I get to the insert picture, you can also swap the toolbar left to right. Again, this guy's in the way. And now I'm kind of screwed because, okay. So sometimes it actually hangs because it doesn't, when I have this toolbar in, or whatever, magic ball thing, navigation ball, it just kind of bugs out, and yeah, then it's just simply in the way. So I'm almost through the whole thing, so I'm just gonna keep it. I'm not gonna turn it off yet. But yeah, back to the notes. So swap left to right is basically where your toolbar will be. And finally, you have the awesome ability of inserting pictures. So if I go to pages here, I think, yeah. So you can insert a picture and add everything else that you might want to, or maybe add some comments. And I'm going to show examples of, for example, even though the colors here are all grayscale, the noting, the notation and note scribbling on top of pictures really works well. The only thing that I don't like about adding pictures is that it does not maintain the aspect ratio. So for example, if I added this image, it's always going to be an aspect ratio of the screen, regardless of what your original image was. So you always have to kind of try and guess scale it, and I was unable to actually find an option anywhere to assume original aspect ratio either. So there's nothing, but other than that, you can copy it and you can do everything else that you would normally do. That's pretty much almost everything. The final thing is the ability to customize your toolbar, and I really love that because then you can find some options that you don't want to use. For example, the useless AI, I would just drop that off and put in images instead. But you have your export, share, images, and swap left to right. So you can customize the toolbar on the side to be as large and useful as you want it to be, and you can also minimize it. I mean, there's also an option to actually just add less clutter here so that you have less things to accidentally touch. So that covers the note-taking experience. Writing is not great. Functionality is now covered, but I really want to cover one thing. When I'm writing, let's just make it less thick and just a normal kind of pencil, so it's equal thickness, and there we go. So this is the palm thing that I was talking about, and this is not something crazy. I'm in a brush mode, right? And I want to select one of the tools. So what am I going to do? I'm going to lie my palm on and select it and then choose it, and okay, this time it works. But I don't know what the hell, there we go. But other times it will simply just not even open or go away because it's detecting my touch constantly. So of course, naturally, if I disable touch, then I don't have that problem and I can just enjoy the experience properly. But it most definitely is a problem. So now I click the button here and then just went closing the option as well. So what? So now I have my touch disabled. Really? This is touch disabled. Yeah, here's the icon, touch disabled. Okay, now it's disabled. All right, so it's a bit buggy. No going around about that. But that's not the main problem. That's not my main issue. My main issue is the actual writing experience. So if I delete this and I have just a pencil that's not pressure sensitive, so it should be simply a normal type of writing experience. The responsiveness of the screen is my problem number one. So this is almost real time, but not exactly. So I don't know how much the screen can, on the camera can pick up. I'm doing it in 50 frames per second so that you can actually see this. So maybe if I make it a little bit thicker, maybe it's gonna be able to actually pick it up better. This is a thicker pen. So by no means is it slow. Don't get me wrong. This is not a slow display. It's very, very responsive and super, super good. But the problem is that I've been using the Remarkable paper tablet for 2 years now, and I've gotten used to that. And basically going from that experience to this one, there are two huge problems. One is that even though this is quite quick, it's noticeably slower experience and it's always lagging behind. And it's okay when you're just showing it like this, but if you've never used Remarkable, then this is going to be perfectly fine. You're going to be okay with this. But if you've used Remarkable and you want to switch onto something like this, you will notice this, and there's no way that you're going to get used to it. It's always feeling like it's catching up, and it never feels good. The second biggest problem is, again, this stupid glass in front of the screen, which is thick. And not only does it feel bad because the tip is plastic, even though, note here, one of the viewers said that if you're using a screen protector, then it improves the writing experience a little bit. I've tried that, and yes, it does improve a little bit, but again, it's nowhere near what Remarkable is. So you are writing with the plastic tip on top of a glass screen. There is no going about it. There's nothing to mimic or hide that. There's nothing to hide that fact. And the biggest problem is the thickness between the glass and where this is written. You always actually see the difference, and you can see the difference in height, and you can see that the line is catching up. So those two things combined, I really don't like. I really don't like it, and it's distracting. And for the past 2 weeks, I've been testing this device, and I've been carrying it around with me alongside with the Remarkable, and I try to use this on my meetings and everywhere. And I actually have to tell you, I started on it, but I would always switch back to Remarkable when note taking. Simply because these two things were too distracting, and I couldn't focus on just taking notes. I was using a device, which is totally wrong for my personal taste. Now again, if your primary use is not note-taking, then the capabilities that it's offering are more than enough, and the performance that it's offering is more than enough. However, if you want this primarily to be your note-taking or, God forbid, drawing device, then that's not what it is. It's not even trying to do that, because you don't even have layers or anything like that. So it's not trying to be something that, you know, it's not, and I respect that. It's just very important that the users also understand that this is not that type of a device. This is primarily a reader with fantastic reader capabilities, but the note-taking capabilities are simply there, and they work, but they are limited, and the performance is less than stellar. So as long as you keep that in mind and that works for you, then I think you're going to be just fine. The apps section, there's two types of apps that the Boox Note 2 supports. So by default you will have these, let's call them black and white, just nice icon types of apps, and that's your Onyx Boox Apps, which offers a browser, calculator, calendar, clock, dictionary, email, then G Drive actually I installed, and all sorts of different things, amongst which you also have the navigation ball, which I will now turn off because it's bugging me. But incidentally, this is where you set up what it can do, and it can perform a lot of different operations, most of the operations that you can think of. And also it can launch any of the apps that are installed, Google Play or Onyx Boox, doesn't matter. You can play music, you can do a sound recorder, not great performances. The microphone itself is not that great, works but not that great. The speakers are even worse, like great for reading, but for anything other than that, it's just like no. And yeah, you can have a screensaver with different images and blah blah, things that are not that impressive or important. One thing that's important to know is that you have the App Store, and if you go to the App Store, you are able to find all sorts of different apps that are all free, and only free apps again are present here. So this App Store is your Onyx App Store basically, and these are apps that are custom made and optimized for an e-ink device. So I personally would always go for that first, to find a version that's optimized for an e-ink device, because there is a difference. Important things to note: Dropbox, Google Drive, Trello, Evernote, all of these production things are here, and there's quite a few to choose from. Not all that you can think of, but most of the important ones are pretty much there, and you're covered with a lot of different things. One note though, the versions on the App Store are not the latest ones. So for example, I had the issue with the Gboard, Google keyboard. I downloaded it from App Store, but I couldn't do voice recognition until I updated it to the latest one, and in order to update it to the latest one, I had to go to Google Play Store. Now, Google Play Store you have by default, but by default it will not work. By default, you have to go through the whole settings procedure. It will guide you and it will explain what you need to do. And it's not a long process, but it is a process where you have to actually register your device. You get an ID thing and it automatically does the whole thing. And in about a couple of hours, your Google Play will become active. And then it works like on any other tablet, which is great and is a problem. Great because you have access to all of the Google App Store apps and everything else. Not great, none of it is optimized for e-ink displays, including the icons or anything else. So the experience is less than great. However, it allows you to use whatever you want. So I can have my Gmail, I can have my Google Drive, I can, these are the things that I was testing and sending to myself, and it just works really good. I mean, it's very useful to actually have this productivity type of tools on your device. I think it's quite useful. One of the things that I would like to mention is the transfer here. But we'll talk about that a little bit later when I mention the storage. But first I wanted to cover the apps themselves. Now, when I've covered that, I think we can just go to storage with one thing first. We need to view the YouTube thing, right? I mean, everyone talks about how amazing it is that you can play a YouTube on an e-ink device. I don't think this is amazing. What do you guys think? Is this great? I don't think that this is an amazing experience. When I go to YouTube and I want to view stuff, this is not what I associate with excellent type of experience. So if I press play...
Hello, welcome to a little bit extra. I've just reviewed the core wave state. You'll be able to see the link somewhere in the screen.
Yeah.
Whatever, you'll find it. I thought, because I didn't have a chance to go through some pages, because there's so many features.
So, I'm sorry, but this is trash. This is interesting to maybe mention, or it's an interesting technical geekery, but as far as usability goes, it's completely useless. Like, do you seriously want to watch a YouTube video like this? We're not talking about just about having it as a black and white and slow we're talking about ghosting.
Set list, which
Look at
has got
this.
patches
So
that
now
are
I'm in full screen.
created. Each of these set lists you can create,
But in order to
formats of 16.
and again, nothing is optimized for a black and white display. So okay, let's say X mode is too extreme. All right, let's go to A2 mode. Let's play then.
It's quite cool because you can create and load your own set lists.
Much better. So this is actually viewable. Ghosting is still there, but it's not completely trashy.
Anyway, let's go back.
But again, now we're talking about frame rate of maybe 4 frames a second, black and white. And why? My main question is when? Why? When, in which situation would I ever choose to do this and view it like this than on my phone or anything else for that matter? So yes, YouTube is there, it can play videos. For me and my personal standpoint is that this is completely useless and it's just a gimmick. I don't see this being useful in any way, shape or form ever. The only place where I do actually think that the X mode is good is when you're browsing and scrolling through things. So for example, let's say that I'm reading a newspaper here and it's a little bit slow, even though we are in that's in normal mode. But if I switch to A2 mode, now we actually can scroll. So this is the A2 mode I prefer a lot more over the X mode, because as soon as you go into the X mode, everything is just so low res and mushy, and it's like you're, I don't know, something just is totally off. And plus the speed difference is just not that big enough to justify its why would you ever use it? So for me, I was always, if I wanted to do scrolling or anything like that, A2 mode is far better option than the X mode, and in reality I never ended up using X mode. I was switching between normal mode for everyday use, everything, and when I wanted to view web content or some scrolling, then I would just switch to A2 mode. X mode is just, I don't know, I don't get it. And finally, we have the storage option, which is awesome because this is where the benefits of an Android 9 device come into full play. You have full access to the folder structure of your device, and it's divided in a logical way. So you can just put your books into your books, your notes are going to be in your note folder, and everything you export is going to, like each note that you export is going to get its own folder. So it's really cool. You get your pictures, you can store them there, you can have your music, and then you can play your music files, and it's just very comfortable and great way of doing things. It's very nice, again, productivity wise, super useful and flexible because it can interface with anything really quickly and painlessly. And there's basically let's say 4 main ways of transferring files between devices. First one is the most obvious one, USB-C. You plug it in, it just appears on your PC or Mac or whatever as a drive, and you just drag and drop things into this folder structure that you see. So basically you'll just get the storage, this folder structure here, you drag and drop files and they're just there. So you're simply copying over the files in there, straightforward as it gets. The second one is quite cool, and that's the Wi-Fi transfer. And for the Wi-Fi transfer you need to use an app. So you go to the apps and you go to the transfer app, and that's by default, it's loaded. And in order to actually use it, you just go to it, and then you will have this IP address with the port. It's important to actually type in the port as well. And it's important that both devices are logged on into the same network, or to the same network. As long as you have those 2 options present, then you will be fine. Alternatively, you can use the QR code, and I think that's going to be easiest to show here. So for example, if I just use my phone and I scan the QR code, it will give me that IP address. And if I press on that IP address, I will get this web page where I can just upload files. So let's say that I want to upload a file, I don't know, this spider thingy. That's the spider thingy, and there's the size and the status. It has been uploaded 100%. The experience is exactly the same on PC as well, so I'm not going to show that because it's super easy. And once it's been uploaded, if I go to my storage and now I find the Wi-Fi transfer folder, there we go. So this is the file that I just uploaded, and that's the image that I got from here. So let's just double check so that you guys can see. And here we go. That's the image that was uploaded, and I think it translates quite well. So let's just go to the portrait. So yeah, that's the image that I simply uploaded to the device, and it works pretty much perfectly. That's the second way of transferring files. The third way I haven't tried because I don't want to and it's again in the transfer app. You have, by default, you have Wi-Fi transfer, but you also have this option of push file. Why didn't I try that? Because it requires you to register and to create a Boox account, and I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that. I don't feel the need. Why? Because, and the way it functions is then it goes through a server. So basically you send a file onto your account, and then you can get it from your account as well. So it's just like same kind of thing. Much bigger advantage for me is the ability to use the standard file manager that I use for all other devices, and there I can also have access to my network places, and I can transfer between my server or anything else between different computers and this device itself. So again, it integrates perfectly. The bad thing is none of it is optimized for e-ink displays, so it looks like garbage half the time. Sometimes it's even totally broken, and you can't even describe like what the hell is going on. So for example, if I were to apply a dark mode, which I won't, then half the icons would disappear, you won't see anything, and it just doesn't work. But the most important thing that does work is file management is completely open and completely ready for you, like any other Android device, which is a huge plus. Alright, that was a lot to cover, but hopefully you found it useful. So it's conclusion time. Let's try and wrap all this up into a meaningful conclusion. First, let's do the pros. It's an absolutely fantastic reader. The reader capabilities are, they leave you wanting for nothing, at least for me. You have a lot of options, but they're never in the way, and it all just works regardless of what type of document I was handling. It just worked really well. So as a reader, it's an absolute knockout. Overall, I believe that combining the note-taking capability, that it can take notes, fantastic reader capabilities, integration with Android 9, and capability that you can send emails, view web pages, visit websites, and do all of the things that you would normally do, basically an Android 9 device, that this makes it an excellent productivity tool. So I believe that it can slot right into your production schedule if it is the type of a device that you are looking for. Battery life is amazing, so I only am gonna have it for 4 weeks, so I don't see the battery life running out. So I can't really testify as to how long the battery life was, except that as it is now, more than 3 weeks, and I've been using it quite a lot, so that's properly impressive. Full Android 9 experience is definitely a plus if that's the kind of thing that you are looking for in an e-ink tablet. It gives you the access to Google Play, it gives you access to internet, it gives you access to speech recognition, you can dictate text, it can hear you, it can speak text back to you, so super flexible and extremely powerful as well. So that's definitely a huge plus. As I mentioned, it has a microphone and speakers, and while while they're not the best of quality, like for maybe voice chats or definitely not for listening to music, but for the device itself reading you an email or a book itself, or you dictating text into an email or into a document itself, it works perfectly fine if you switch to the Gboard, because the default one just doesn't work. With the Gboard it works perfectly. I think that's a gigantic plus as well, and it goes hand in hand with the productivity side of things. And finally, there's a tiny thing which I also find a plus, but for me that's a big deal. At the bottom you have those 2 screws, which means that the service of the device is easy and I would assume not expensive. If you are able to simply unscrew the screws and open up the device and replace the battery if you needed to, that's a gigantic thing, because we haven't been seeing that trend in a long time, and I actually welcome this a lot. So for me, this is a big plus in a long-term side of things. So for example, if you have this device and you're using it for, I don't know, 3-4 years, something will probably go wrong. At least the battery will, maybe you would want to change the battery. And having these screws, I guess it's a bit of a peace of mind that you could easily do something like that. So that's a good thing. On to the bad side of things, the cons. As I mentioned in the beginning, the design itself. I am not a fan. I don't think it's ergonomic enough for the multi-hour use type of thing that this device is supposed to be. I think it's a little bit too heavy, and it just doesn't fit me. It doesn't fit me at all, and I think the design is that it was a wrong decision to go with the standard tablet type of design for this type of device, simply because it is meant to be used for longer periods of time, and it just does not sit well in my hands, at least, and I explained at the beginning why. Second big down point or a con for me is the screen itself, or to be specific, the glass top, which is super reflective. Mind you, some of the issue of reflectivity will go away with the screen protector, but it doesn't go away completely. But even with the protector, that just adds to the second issue, which is for me the biggest one, which is the depth of the screen, how far down the screen actually is that's displaying your strokes when you're writing in relation to the surface that you're writing on. So that's a big problem for me. I absolutely understand that for some people it will not be a problem at all, but for me that's a deal breaker, complete deal breaker. Hand in hand with that, I have to also talk about the writing experience. The depth issue definitely affects the writing experience, but not only the depth issue itself. We also have the problem of the plastic tip on a glass surface just feels like plastic tip on a glass surface. And even with the screen protector, yes, it is marginally better, but nothing to, write home about. Basically just a plastic tip on top of a plastic protector on top of a glass screen. Not really a great writing experience, but if that doesn't bother you and you don't really look for authentic writing experience, then it's fine. Probably it won't bother you. Screen speed is a problem. It's not that fast at all, and in normal mode. And if you go to speed up, it's just, as I've shown, it just then introduces huge ghosting issues. By no means is it a slow screen, but it's not fast enough if you are looking for a writing type of experience. So again, if you're primarily focused on using this as a reader, then the screen won't bother you at all. None of these writing experience type of things will bother you at all. And if all you want from the device is to be basically able to scribble some notes here and there, I think that you won't care about any of these issues. However, on the other side, if you are looking for a note-taking device, hence the Note 2, that's primarily going to be serving your purpose of taking notes and writing, and also occasionally reading documents, then the writing experience might be something that you actually have to consider, especially considering the price point. The numbers, the performance numbers, like the CPU and the amount of RAM and all that kind of stuff, that doesn't tell the whole story, because you can have, as this device has, 8 cores, 2 gigahertz speed, and 4 gigabytes of RAM. However, it needs that much if it is to run an Android 9. And therein lies the problem. Because it's an Android 9 based device, it is sluggish and it suffers from Android 9 sluggish performance issues, which any device that runs it suffers from those issues from time to time. And if my past experience with Android devices is any true, then that means that the Android 9 device like this is gonna become more slow over time, because pretty much almost every single Android 9 device did get to have that problem. Android 10 has a much better memory management, and I don't see that problem anymore, but this is not 10, this is 9. As such, I have to mention that as well, because I assume, I haven't experienced it, but I assume that it is entirely possible that the memory management issues of Android 9 platform will affect this device as well, and that it will become a little bit more slow over time. However, if we say like, nope, they solved it and it's not gonna happen, all right, even so, it feels too sluggish and too slow for the specs that it has, and again for the price point it is. It should fly around, and at first I thought it was the speed of the screen that's actually lagging behind, but that's actually not the case, because when you're typing, it misses strokes, it misses types. The device itself is not handling your input quickly enough, and that's just bizarre considering what this is supposed to be. Default keyboard. Absolutely freaking useless. So the first thing that you want to do when you get the device is to enable Google Play Store, and then the absolute first thing after that to do is to get the Gboard or your preferred keyboard that you like to use with the Android device. The default keyboard that comes with this takes too much space, slow, not really capable, and the speech recognition that it uses is absolutely useless. Another con is the AI, or the text recognition AI, so to speak. As you've seen, I find it useless, because even if it does recognize things correctly, there's so much editing that needs to be done. It does not recognize bullet points, it does not recognize paragraphs, it doesn't do any of those things, and either flow mode or the normal text recognition mode, neither of them were able to give me results that I could actually use in a day-to-day situation. So for me, kinda useless at this point. Speakers, yes, it has them, but please don't consider using them for anything other than just maybe voice chat or the device reading you a book to you. Android 9, I listed it as a pro, but I'm also listing it as a con as well. First of all, because of the performance issues that I mentioned, but second of all, Android 9, full Android 9 tablet experience on an e-ink display device doesn't make sense at this point in time. Maybe in the future, if we had a Google Play Store that's e-ink friendly and optimized for e-ink devices, and it just offers e-ink display type of apps, then it would make sense. There are definitely pluses to being able to access all of the apps, but let's say that 90% of the time, apps that you use from Google Play Store on this device will offer you subpar experience simply because they are not optimized and they're not meant to be used on a screen like this, which means that you won't see icons, you won't see buttons, there's going to be huge lagging because everything is dependent on scrolling. I mean, most of mobile apps are dependent on scrolling and smooth display, right? Well, this is not it. So then it just doesn't make any sense. So Android 9 is definitely a positive type of experience, and it can be, but it also offers this kind of weird thing that happens after prolonged time of use of this device, or of Note 2, and I get back to either my phone or a regular tablet. I literally go, oh, like, I don't understand why would I use Android 9 features in this type of environment. Yes, the battery life is excellent, and yes, the screen can be dimmed. Those are the two main things which makes the battery life, last a lot. But other than that, if you take away the glare of the screen, if you take that out of the equation, then you're stuck with a very unresponsive Android 9 tablet device that has a huge battery life, which is great. And even the screen thing is not truly not glaring, because it does have a light, and because it has a light, you will be tempted to use it all the time. So now I need to try and sum up this device, which is not an easy job, for me at least personally. To say that it's all bad would be ridiculous, because obviously it isn't. There's huge amount of positives, and the battery life is absolutely amazing. The ability to integrate it in your everyday life via Android 9 apps and integrate it with the computers and the emails and all of these kinds of things, it just makes it a super useful productivity oriented type of tool. And it will make you want to use it a lot. And herein lies my problem and dilemma. More I used it, less I liked it, and more it gave me issues, the design itself, the weight, the glass surface, and all of these kinds of things. So then it just kind of started giving me this push me, pull me type of effect, because I know it can do all of these things, and I know I can definitely use them, and I want to use them. But when I start using the device itself, it just starts pushing me away because of all the things that I mentioned already, so I don't want to repeat myself. So I can't give a definitive yes or no on this. I think it's a case-by-case basis, and the best way I can try and summarize it is that as a reader, it is an absolutely fantastic device, slightly uncomfortable for prolonged use, but if you're okay with that, and if you're okay that your writing experiences doesn't have to be like super awesome, and that some things are a little bit off when writing, then I think you'll definitely like this. So for grading papers and maybe scientific research and all these kinds of things, it definitely works. But my main problem is that I've been using Remarkable for 2 years, and I've gotten used to a certain type of experience. So I think that's my main issue with the device, and that I have that my starting point and expectations price-wise, and what I expected for the price, which is $550, that's a lot. I expected more, and every single time I used it, I expected more in all aspects. I expected it to be more smooth of an experience. I expected it to be nicer materials. I expected to have a better pen. I expected the screen to actually be flush as they say it is, but it's not. So if I'm perfectly honest, I expected to like it. I wanted to like it. I wanted to love it, because the potential of the device is something that fits into my work style absolutely perfectly. And I desperately tried, like on every meeting and everything, I just like, okay, diligently I'm gonna use this, and it's now this time I'm gonna click with it and it's gonna work. But for me, it didn't happen. I'm not gonna be keeping this device. It just doesn't click with me, which doesn't mean that it won't suit you. So just please keep in mind what your expectations are, and if you have an opportunity, go ahead and try it, because I think that the main two things when you're trying it out is to see how it feels in your hands and in your reading type of situation, and if it feels comfortable. And the second thing is the writing experience. Do the things that I mentioned bother you or not? If it's comfortable and you like it, and the writing experience doesn't bother you and you think it's fine, then definitely go for it. I think you'll end up with a really good device that will offer so much for your productivity and day-to-day basis. However, if you are used to, let's say, for Remarkable type of writing experience, I don't see how it's possible to actually get used to this type of a downgrade of a writing experience. And I think that's an important note to kind of keep. So two main advices: try it out and be absolutely certain what you want to use it for and in which cases you will be using it, and keep these things in mind. And then I think you'll be able to make an informed decision, hopefully based on info that's provided on this video. thank you for watching, and thank you for the support. And if you're interested and if you like this, stay tuned for next week, when there's going to be the video 3 of this mini series, where I'm going to be putting these two against each other to actually see how they stack up, and yeah, who's better at what, etc, etc. Thanks again. Consider subscribing and liking the video if you liked it, and see you next time. Bye.